Welcome to TerreScience, where we explore the science of consciousness. Hello, my name is Rajnish. Welcome to TerreScience. It's a great
Thank you.
pleasure today to have Michael. Thank you, Michael, for joining TerreScience.
Thank
And
you, Rajnish.
you and I have shared common interests for quite a while. I'm a plant scientist, and I've always really enjoyed and admired your ability to express things about food and plants in the past. And I don't know, somehow serendipitously, serendipitously, we both moved uh, towards looking at consciousness. And in the past, like 5, 6 years, I've been interested in different chemicals that are in plants that can alter consciousness. I've been studying those as well. So, uh, what I was thinking we could talk about today, Michael, is the terminology, is the definitions, because when I go meet with people, scientists, and people who think about these things, everyone has a different definition of these words. So, how would you, just to put you on the spot, how would you define consciousness?
Well, you have on the spot. Um, the simplest definition is experience. The one word there are two one word definitions. One is experience, the ability to have experience and know that you're having experience. The other is awareness, and having an awareness of one's environment. A classic definition that the philosopher Thomas Nagel put forward in a famous essay called "What Is It Like to Be a Bat?" If it is like anything, to be you, or to be a bat, or to be a plant, um, that then qualifies it for consciousness. Um, we know that it's not like anything to be this pen. And it's not like anything to be my phone. At least I don't think so. Um, but with many animals, we know it is like something. It is like something to be your dog or your cat. Now, of course, we have to infer this. But I have to infer you're conscious too, and that it's something that like to be like you. But since we're built the same, and we can describe similar experiences of being conscious, we assume that we're each conscious, and we have imagination and theory of mind and all these things. Um, so that's those are useful definitions, I think. But it gets confusing because some people use the word sentience to mean consciousness, and just basically argue they're indistinguishable one from the other. I don't think that's very useful. I think it is useful to have a kind of more basic sense of responsiveness to one's environment that even bacteria have, and that sentience might be a good word to use for these more simple creatures that certainly don't have self-reflection, certainly don't have, I mean, I say certainly, who knows, don't have interiority. So our consciousness has a lot of bells and whistles on it. So I think having a word for a simpler form of consciousness, one that perhaps evolution evolved into something more like our consciousness, is useful. Then there's the word intelligence, which also gets confused. For intelligence, I kind of like the ability to solve problems, and specifically the ability to solve problems that the solutions can't be programmed. I mean, my phone can solve various math problems, but I don't think it's intelligent. So it's the ability to solve novel problems. We can put it that way. Intelligence and consciousness, what's their connection? I think they're kind of orthogonal to one another. And I think that this is one of the reasons a lot of people are confused about the potential of AI to be conscious, because AIs are certainly can achieve great levels of intelligence, problem solving ability, but it's not like consciousness will automatically follow. Consciousness is not a product of intelligence. You can be really dumb and be conscious, and you can be unconscious and intelligent.
Right.
So I see them as separate. However, AI is going to confuse all these questions because it won't be hard to fool us into thinking that they are
Right.
conscious.
Well, it seems like you said, most of our inclination towards defining consciousness tends to be based on our experience and then likeness to that. But if you were to break it down into very simplest nature or form of what what we may write it in a sentence, it has to have a component of perception of some information and then being able to respond. So the ability to respond may be may we can put degree on that based on the sophistication of the system. So the perception is there, and then the ability to respond is there. So
I,
if
I
we
think
go
there's
with,
one step.
yeah,
I think there's one step between those two things, which is
yeah,
evaluation.
right,
There's a valence to whatever information is coming in. It's either good for the organism or bad for the organism, and based on that, it responds. So I think you need those three steps.
right, and so is that step where a little bit of the intelligence is playing a role, where perception, then the intelligence is deciding or analyzing whether it's good or a bad thing to respond, and how to
Well,
respond.
yeah. Well, we haven't talked about feelings, and
Right,
that complicates things further because
yeah,
a lot of those judgments as to whether this is good or bad are not really thought through. It
right,
seems to me they're just a matter of feeling, at least in mammals and higher animals. Um, and I think that a lot of recent research has looked at affect as a prerequisite of consciousness, and rather than intelligence. And if you follow those, and I'm thinking of Antonio Damasio or Mark Solmes's work, that I don't think feelings necessarily depend on intelligence either, but they may be, as Solmes says, the wellspring of consciousness.
so that brings up a really important question then, because if feelings are necessary or are an important component of consciousness, then we can clearly define lines where we think which organisms have feelings and which don't. So is that one way to define
How?
consciousness?
How do we do that?
Well, if feelings, if feelings require some sort of machinery or some sort of even a biochemical response, somehow we if we can quantify what is a feeling and what is involved, like in humans, okay, there are hormones that come up, and maybe we can measure those, but then we understand how humans feel. We have no idea going beyond that, and so we can't
Well,
even define that. So
we have behavioral evidence of our feelings, right? I mean, we
right,
have
right,
facial expressions, we have
yeah,
increase in blood pressure
right,
or stress hormones. So you can correlate our feelings with various behavioral outward signs, but that's not identical to the feeling itself. It's just a sign of the feeling, I think.
right. But then feeling is another becomes another word that then is linked to consciousness. That means if we cannot define a feeling in some other living system, then we have to draw that line there. So how
Yeah.
how how do you deal with that?
Well, I think pain is the case to look at,
Okay, yeah,
and but even that, Descartes refused to
right,
believe that the animals he vivisected felt pain, even though they were howling, and he thought it was just the involuntary uh, reactions of an automaton. But it seems to most of us can recognize pain in animals, and but there was a time where we couldn't. So
right,
so I don't even know how reliable that is. I mean, we just have this barrier, which is the fact that consciousness is interior, and there's a William James called it a breach between minds
Yeah.
that you just can't cross. And and so I think that really complicates it. And the larger issue that, of course, our science is not designed to penetrate that interiority. It's
Right.
designed for measurable outward objective qualities. And since Galileo, we kind of bracketed all subjective qualities.
Well, one thing we do see across the board is response to the environment, and if we look at perception and, like you said, then valuation, and then maybe some interpretation of that valuation, whether that takes form of some understanding or feelings. Feelings can be reward or can be detrimental, but some of that, understanding is also a big word, but understanding means absorbance of that valuation, and then determining a reaction. So if you were able to write this in a much better, profound way, then consciousness becomes sort of like a degree of the ability to respond to one's environment, and with all the systems underneath are underpinning, and they can be with a range of awareness, whether you're aware or not. That's kind of where I'm leaning
Yeah, I
towards
think
this.
that's true. But I mean, think about how responsive we are without being aware. I mean, we are, as organisms, we're responding to things all the time. Any perturbation in homeostasis, and a lot of these problems are automatically taken care of. Your blood chemistry. You don't have to think about your blood chemistry, but it's being adjusted all the time. So
Right.
that's responsiveness, and it sure
Yep.
sounds intelligent. But, but it's not conscious. And
Yeah.
one of the big questions in consciousness research is why do we need consciousness if we can do all these things automatically? It seems like a waste. And one answer is that there are times when you have conflicting needs. Should I sleep or eat? I'm getting signals on both. And when you can't automatically resolve, when they're not, when you can't correlate, 8 on a sleep scale with 4 on a food eating scale, you need consciousness perhaps to resolve it. And that's an interesting theory.
Yeah.
It's to make decisions where in amidst uncertainty, as Mark Soames would put it.
Yeah. So the need for consciousness is there, and also I equate it to photosynthesis in some ways, because when plants produce all the food, but they can't move, they are stuck to one location. Then animals and humans have to go and search or get that food, and they have to make decisions and rationalize and think about, and those decisions, like you mentioned, become very relevant. What to do, make a conscious decision. So the role of consciousness in evolution seems to be really important in survival as well. But that's great. I think we can continue on this for a long time if you wanted to. But would you like to share anything about some project or anything you're working on currently?
Very briefly, yeah, I am working on
Yeah,
a book, as you might have guessed, on consciousness. I've
yeah,
given this a lot of
yeah.
thought. I've had a lot of confusion around it. I think people will be surprised how little progress we've made. um, but I think the case of plants is very interesting. I think it's kind of clarifying, as will be the case of artificial intelligence. So we're exploring these frontiers of consciousness on these two very different ends of the spectrum.
Right.
My guess is we will fall in line and decide AI is conscious before we decide that plants are. But I don't know that that's the vote I would cast if I had to choose between the two, because the problem with AI is they're going to do a better job convincing us they're conscious, because they speak in our language and they are students of our behavior and what we say, and they've read the whole internet. And plants, poor plants, they haven't had a chance to do that.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I also foresee that's happening. But hopefully, during this path, we'll make some solid definitions that will then help broaden.
I think that's a worthwhile project, and I look forward to participating in it.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Michael. I've always enjoyed talking with you, and I look
Likewise.
forward to your book. And thank you again, and for joining TerreScience. And everyone who's listening, please hit the like button and subscribe.
The beauty of our environment, the uniqueness of our planet, of course, but also the people I've met, and the fact that people do want to play a stewardship role. They do.